Hi and welcome. Today we are going to conduct a literary analysis of A Letter to God written by G.L. Fontes. It is from the NCERT textbook First Flight, which is prescribed for the CBSE for grade 10. The category and the analysis. The title is A Letter to God and the writer is G.L. Fontes. The setting, that is the time and the place. The time is the harvest season in Latin America. The setting can be analyzed from what is happening in the story, identifying the words and phrases, looking for the currency that is mentioned. For example, peso is mentioned. There are currently 8 countries that use pesos. Almost all are in South America. Namely Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Cuba and the Dominican Republic, Mexico, the Philippines and the Uruguay. However, each country has its own pesos. The geographical setup, the type of weather, wind, blowing, etc. from the east can be analyzed that it was the harvest season. When making notes, one has to select citations, make a note of the paragraphs, line numbers and the page numbers that will help the student to recollect and write answers when the notes are ready. The characters or the protagonist. The hero definitely in the literature is known as the protagonist and the villain is known as the antagonist. So over here the protagonist is the lyncher and the other characters are the postmaster who picks his letter and the postman who picks the letter and the postmaster who's the savior who saves him from the conflict or the situation that he was facing. The kind of conflict that is depicted throughout the story is man versus nature, while towards the end the conflict changes. The plot, the sequence of the events connected by cause and effect in a narrative manner. The rising action is the need to overcome the loss of crops, and the conflict, as we have mentioned earlier, it is man versus nature. The climax is a shift of conflict from man versus nature to man versus man, which is quite ludicrous, laughable, comical. The exposition or the ending of the story is such that he proposes another channel for sending the money for his help, as he mentions that the postmen or the postmasters, they are crooks. The theme, the writer has selected a theme which is socio-cultural in nature, and he has focused on the irony of situation. The situation made the protagonist think against his savior. That means most probably in the country corruption might be prevailing, so the writer or the character generalized it as a social conduct. The style is simple narrative. The narrative technique employed hooks the reader expecting a predicted ending. The textual structure is linear narrative. The events happen one after the other. The writer has chosen a linear narrative structure for writing which is convincing to the reader, as it keeps the reader hooked to the story, making them predict the ending and look forward to a conclusion. The form of writing selected by the writer is a short story. The genre is fiction. The writer has chosen a social fiction. The type of fiction that he has selected is the social fiction, which is based on real experiences. It is a typical fiction writing which is natural and believable. When it is relating to a real life experience, it is believable. The tense is generally the past tense. For example, the woman who was preparing supper replied as past tense. The older boys were working and the smaller ones were playing. So it is past tense used throughout the story. The narration is in the third person. Now let us see how to use this piece of information in writing an answer. Most probably this forms as the 9th question, which is the detailed question, extrapolatory question involving literary analysis as well as opinion of the reader. The analytic expression could be always begin with the writer and then the title of the story, so that you land up with a strong verb. G.L. Fontes in his short story A Letter to God sketches the protagonist common man clenched. This is a strong verb over here. clenched in the claws of conflict, man versus nature, throwing him in a socio-cultural situation where the protagonist turns against his savior, thus changing the gears of conflict to man versus man. Fontes has selected the genre fiction using a linear narrative in the past tense, though the rising action might be slow, but the climax and resolution is abrupt, which is ludicrous. About 70 to 100 words are allowed for question number 9, and we have used about 78 words, exhausted 78 words, and we still have a little less space for writing our opinion and summarizing it. For writing the literary analysis, I have used the literary log, narrative log,